We will call this November 25th, 2019 regular meeting of the Carmel Clay School Board to order. Thank you all for joining us on this snowy day. We have a number of very special presentations this evening to acknowledge the accomplishments some of our high school students and some of our great teachers and our great community members. I do note that there are not high schoolers present. I will assume they're studying as opposed to didn't want to go out in the snow, but it is finals week. Madam Secretary, roll call.
All board members are present today.
Thank you. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. As we start the presentations, I just want to let each group know that we will take a photo of the group. And normally this is where I say parents can take photos as well, but maybe kids can take photos of their parents. After the last presentation, we'll take a short break to allow the rest of you that do not plan on spending more of your evening with us to depart. We will... that's not no. We will move to presentations. The first presentation is Dr. Harness.
Thank you very much. The 2019 State AP Scholar Award is given to one female and one male student each year to represent the state of Indiana. Students with the greatest number of AP exams taken with scores of 3 or higher with no less than a 3.5 average are in that pool. Out of the thousands of students in Indiana that participated in the AP testing last year, I'm proud to say that both the male and female recipients were from Carmel High School, and both are currently students at MIT. I guess they ended up okay. I would like to first recognize Jessica Zhang. Jessica could not be here this evening because she is studying at MIT. Also, the same is true for our male recipient, Joey Herons, but his parents are here to receive the award on his behalf. Mr. and Mrs. Herons?
Is sister going to be the photographer?
She is.
She's welcome to the
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you money too.
Thank you. And they also have a little statement from Joey that they'd like to read. Right here.
Please.
Perfect.
So my son sent this to us over the weekend, and he's in finals. He gets back on Thursday. So what he wrote was this. He said, "First, I want to start by saying that it's an incredible honor to receive this recognition. I could not be where I am today if it were not for the Carmel Clay school system, which, as everyone knows, provides an excellent learning environment, one in which I thrived. Not only did I have access to a wide variety of classes, but also many excellent teachers who made a difference in my life and who I will never forget. In short, the size, rigor, and quality of the Carmel school system gave me all the tools I needed to succeed, and I am forever grateful for having all of these opportunities I took for granted in high school. By using these opportunities and performing well on AP tests, I got into my dream college, MIT, and I am so incredibly thankful for the love and support of my parents, who have always been there for me. Thank you, Carmel, for providing me the opportunity to get this award, and go Greyhounds."
And if we have sister come up too?
Come on up. We're going to take a picture.
Shall I continue? Before we get off our first recognition, I want to know that Joey's sister is a 7th grade teacher in downtown Indianapolis, teaching for Teach for America. And so they got 2 notables in their family, and she's making a difference in junior high, which is my favorite grade level in the world. So I think we should at least give her 3 claps and a whoosh for that. So good. It's a Beresford thing, sorry. It gives me really great honor and so much pride to do this next resignation. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning, so this recognition to Dr. Tom Harmis. You want to come on up here, boss? You guys can clap if you want on his way up there. I was notified this year that, kind of under the table, that Dr. Tom Harmis was going to be recognized as the Indiana State High School Principal of the Year. And that was by the Indiana State High School Principals Association. And on November the 22nd, in the evening of November 22nd, Dr. Harmis was named and represented Carmel Clay in that competition. And the way it works is each region in the state nominate like a high school principal of the year, and then all those nominees kind of go head to head, and then they choose the best principal in the state, and it was Dr. Harmis. And notably, in his first year as principal at Carmel High School a couple of years ago, Dr. Harmis had served at Creekside Middle School and had opened that school several years ago, and then moved into the high school position. And immediately when he got to high school, he was working with his team, as he always does, and noticed that that we needed to do something to support kids' mental health. And working alongside the Student Services team, they created the Culture of Care initiative. And that program continues to reduce the stigma and establish positive awareness to mental health for students and staff in that building. Again, as he was working in it, he noticed that the professional learning communities, which is a way that teachers can collaborate and get better and better, that we needed to up our game in that area. And again, he circled himself with the team, and they worked real hard, and trying to lead the assistant principals and department chairs through a process that really moving people from managing programs to leading programs. And doing that from the ground up, working with the teachers and the leaders, and just building those leaders to build their capacity, and in that way make a bigger difference for the students at Carmel High School. So they asked the superintendent for a quote, and as they often do, and I said, Dr. Harmis is the epitome of a school leader who's earned the respect and love of the student body, his staff, his colleagues, parents, and the community. He sees every challenge as an opportunity to make Carmel High School a better and special place for students and staff. And we're very proud of Dr. Harmis, and we congratulate him on this outstanding achievement. So You know, I'll tell you the kind of the little surprise we did to him. So I sent out a message to his colleagues without his knowledge and said, hey, if anybody would like, Dr. Harmos is going to get this award on Sunday night, and you know, you're welcome to join a group. And we didn't want everybody to come to the banquet because that would be a tip-off that, you know, that he would get picked, because it wanted to be a surprise. But as he was giving his acceptance speech, the door opened in the back, and 25 of his colleagues came in. And as he was giving his speech, and he went, "Really? Really?" And those folks all took time out of their Sunday night just to come in and cheer on one of their colleagues, and that speaks volumes as well. But I couldn't just be any prouder of Dr. Tom Harmos, the 2019 Indiana High School Principal of the Year. Dr. Harmos.
Oh, I've got also something.
I always can tell that when I say we'd like to say something, it's kind of something I do before he starts talking.
The one thing that kind of shocked me was becoming Principal of the Year and then finding out that I resigned.
We'll talk about that.
We still have a few years to go there, Dr. B. A few years to go. First of all, thank you very much to Dr. Beresford and the board for allowing me to do this, allowing me to lead Carmel High School. I also need to thank the staff, the administrative team, the CHS leadership team, the students and the parents, and truly the entire Carmel Clay community. You know, we understand at the high school that we can't do what we do. We can't have the Joeys be successful or the Jessicas be successful if they aren't successful in kindergarten all the way through. And we get to build on that greatness that you guys build from the beginning of their education, and we truly, truly thank you. I'd also like to thank my wife, Lori, and my family for their support. Sue Sinclair and her husband. Sue is my administrative assistant, and believe me, she earned this award. She has done a fantastic job for me, and thank you so very much for being here. I do recognize that this is a unique opportunity to represent all the high school principals in the state of Indiana, and I'll cherish that opportunity. But every day I have the opportunity to represent Carmel High School and Carmel Clay Schools and the community of Carmel. And I can tell you that I'm just truly grateful. Thank you very much. Do I get to shake hands?
Sure. As they're shaking hands, I will let you know that Dr. Harmos will represent Indiana in the National High School Principal of the Year competition. So more may be coming on this great honor. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Please continue.
We'll just keep rolling. Our next recognition we want to do is for Mohawk Trails Elementary School, the 2019 National Blue Ribbon School. And we have some representatives here, if you all want to come on up here. Dr. Dudley, you want to come and say a few words? Then I'll close it.
Thank you. Good evening. So this evening we're recognizing Mohawk Trails Elementary School for being named the National Blue Ribbon School. Mohawk Trails Elementary School is one of 8 schools in Indiana that received this award this year. The Blue Ribbon Schools program honors public and private elementary, middle, and high schools that are either high-performing or have improved student achievement, especially among disadvantaged students. Each year, the United States Department of Education awards schools whose students attain and maintain academic excellence. The Blue Ribbon program is part of a larger national effort to identify and disseminate knowledge about best school leadership and teaching practices. In November, Mrs. Jennifer Green and Mrs. Sarah Agee had the opportunity to attend the Blue Ribbon ceremony in Washington, D.C. to accept this award. This award affirms the hard work of the students, the educators, the families, and the entire Mohawk Trails community in creating a safe and welcoming school where students master challenging content. We are so very proud of Mohawk Trails community. Thank you. Congratulations.
Well, I can't help it but just add a little bit to that. To be named a National Blue Ribbon School, it's one of the highest accomplishments a school can get in the United States. And I'm extremely proud of this Mohawk Trails team. You got a good portion of them here, but there's a lot more turtles back home in the building every day. These is a small group of dedicated educators who change the world one student at a time, one kid at a time. And they deeply care about the whole child. They work hard to make their school a special place for kids to learn and grow. And this type of honor doesn't occur by accident. It really takes the combined efforts of the students, the staff, the parents, the community to earn this distinction. And I just couldn't be prouder of you guys, and congratulations. And you have earned a blue ribbon in the United States education system, so congratulations. So on top of that blue ribbon, you also get this nice laser printed certificate. So congratulations if you want to meet the board. And Jennifer, did you want to say a few words?
Sure.
You have an opportunity to address the board or the world.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for this honor and for inviting us here this evening. We had more turtles that were coming but were held up by the weather. That they're here with us in spirit, and I just couldn't be more proud to be I'm a proud principal of this school. And we have a great school community and a school family. And I just thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, sorry. We have Trey Brown, who is one of our instructional assistants. I have Jeanette Higgins, who's a second grade teacher. I have Lori Hayes, who's a second grade teacher, and Sarah Agee, who's our assistant principal. Thank you.
Shake hands with the world. Get a picture. Congratulations. Come on, I need an age picture.
Yes, I know.
Our next recognition is for distinguished service, and I'd like to ask Dr. Steve Stefanoff to step up to the podium. You guys can clap as he's walking up there. I've known Dr. Stefanoff since he was the principal of Fulton Junior High over on the west side, and our careers have kind of paralleled here and there, and we met up again in Carmel Clay Schools, and Steve kind of has a storied history here, where he served as a principal at the middle school, and then he served as the director of human resources and assistant superintendent for several years, and then I'm sure you guys had a great celebration when he went. Well, not a great celebration because he didn't retire from here, right?
No.
So then he moved from there to Noblesville, and then that's where you had that. After a stop in Center Grove as a superintendent, and then Carmel Clay had a need, and that need was in human resources, and Steve unretired and came back to Carmel Clay Schools, and I can tell you that he's done a lot of work in a little less than 2 years as an interim here, when you break it down to its simplest form, I think the most important thing that we do as a central office, as a district leadership team, is help our principals hire the very best of the very best, because the point of contact is when those teachers meet those students in the classroom. And if there's one person on the planet that focuses on making that moment and going for that person, it's going to be Steve Stefanoff. Now, there's also a lot of other junk that goes along with being Director of Human Resources. It's one of those jobs where you walk in the building and everybody goes, uh-oh. Like, what's he doing here? And he does get to do a lot of good things, too, but a lot of times he's problem solving and working in a lot of difficult situations and things you'll never hear about, but a lot of them are very difficult situations with staff and their families and a lot of good things. So he's just been a top-notch administrator and really a mentor to me, and we just can't thank Steve enough for his service to Carmel Clay Schools. Now he tells me he's going to really retire this time. That he's not going to unretire, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, I had a job offer Friday, and I said, nope, I'm done.
All right, so you made it through the first ask. We'll go with that. But we just want to take some time to really thank you, Steve, for your service again, and then we reserve the right to call you if things fall apart again.
Absolutely.
But no, I just want to thank you, Steve, and let's give him his appreciation for his service here.
Well, first off, thank you so very much for the recognition. It is not necessary, but I do appreciate it. It's been my privilege and a pleasure to work for Carmel Clay Schools twice in my almost 50-year career. I've been around a long time. This district has a special place in my heart, and I would, if ever needed again, I'm happy to come back and help whenever I can because of the reputation of the district. We have such talented teachers and administrators and support staff. We have great kids. We have supportive parents. We have a caring school board. It just doesn't get any better than that. And so I'm confident that Carmel Clay Schools will continue to be the best school district in the state of Indiana. So thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Stefanoff, for your service. It was greatly appreciated. Now I'm in an unusual position standing down here. So it tells you the magnitude of this next recognition. We frequently get to recognize the great work of our students, employees, and community members at our board meeting. However, tonight we have a very special award recognizing certain of our CCS family members with a Community Service Award. This award goes to members of our community who go above and beyond for our district. It is my honor and privilege this evening to recognize and really thank Laura Jarrett and Nikki McNally. Nikki and Laura met with Dr. Beresford in his first days at CCS with their concerns about school safety. So when Carmel Clay Schools decided to ask our community for additional funding for school safety and mental health initiatives, we turned to them. They formed a committee, navigated the rules, and got the information out. And it's thanks to them, their committee, and numerous volunteers that Carmel Clay Schools was able to be the first school district in the state of Indiana to pass a school safety referendum within months after our Indiana legislators authorized such funding. Before I let Nikki and Laura say a few words and introduce, maybe their committee members didn't make it because of the weather, this evening, I'd also like to thank our community for all their support and for voting to provide us with this funding. Nikki and Laura, please come up.
Yeah,
that's it. You got to share it. Would you say anything?
I wasn't prepared to
No?
speak.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is that this is something I think Laura and I, we wouldn't change anything. We were so grateful that Dr. Beresford brought us this opportunity to improve our schools. We felt at times we bit off way more than we could chew doing this, but we're so happy that we had this opportunity because we know that this is going to really make things better for so many students and make our schools safer, and we just can't wait to see things start to roll out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is amazing. Thanks for all of you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Did you want through?
You want me to come for the picture? All right, this is the point where I excuse you, though I am going to just let everybody know before people leave that on the agenda we were supposed to have a recommendation for changes to the start and end of elementary school, but that decision has been postponed. I shouldn't say decision. That recommendation will be postponed. We will this evening discuss that item on our agenda and hear a report from Dr. Beresford. Also, we had on the agenda this evening the recognition for the Carmel Education Foundation. That has been rescheduled for our January 27th meeting, and I assume we will have the football team representatives back at another meeting. So this is your moment if you need to go study for finals to make your exit. Yes, drive carefully and happy holidays, happy end of the school year, and thank you for coming out.
It's pretty cool, isn't it, Jack?
Oh, you thought there was going to be students up there?
And can I take my fancy certificate then too? Start. Thank you. I mean it though. I'm so grateful. Will that be like, gotta go. No. Well, don't screw it up. I've actually already got a call from New Albany Park, so it's already rolling. Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
All right, next on the agenda, we have public comment. I'm assuming we have nobody here. Thank you. Next, we will move to consent. The items on consent are personnel report, claims, payroll, approval of gift applications. We have the Creekside Middle School patrons made a donation to the Performing Arts Department, and then we have the Carmel Education Foundation awards of grants to the various clubs for participating in Ghosts and Goblins. May I have a motion to approve consent, please?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? No? Thank you. All in favor of approving consent, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. Consent carries. Dr. Beresford, would you like to make a comment on personnel?
Yes, I wanted to let you know that we have a principal, Jill Shipp, is going to be absent from the building. It was just a few weeks this week and included before Christmas break and a few weeks after. So we have an interim principal, Kim Brown, who comes to us highly recommended, who is a retired principal from Lawrence Township. And so she's helping out at Prairie Trace, and her and Jill got to get together, and she's working closely with Mr. Reed. So we're in good hands at Prairie Trace, and I just wanted to make you aware that that was on your consent agenda when you approved that. And so we're in good hands at Prairie Trace, and our thoughts and prayers are sticking with Jill Shipp, our principal, and great support network there in the Prairie Trace family, and we'll keep moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Beresford. We will next move to action items. The first item is the bid award for Collegewood Elementary interior finishes and renovations. Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. This total bid award is $924,680. And as you noted, this is what we call mid-cycle renovations, and we're replacing all the finishes in the school and doing some minor renovations. But it's primarily replacing finishes, carpet, wall finishes, and so forth. And so we took bids on November 20th, and we had, and I want to point out that we had 7 bidders respond, which is not very many. And you'll see that again when we talk about the bids for the new elementary school. But we would recommend this award, and we'll be starting this work later in 2020 in the spring.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the bid award for Collegewood Elementary interior finishes and renovations?
So moved.
Thank you, Katie. A second? Thank you, Pam. Any discussion or questions for Mr. McMichael? Pam?
Yes, number 1 category, general trades, what would that include?
Yeah, let's see. We have flooring and painting. So, Ron, that would be some minor renovations, but I'm not sure if we can get one of the guys to be mostly the demolition part. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? No. Roger, while you said we only had 7 bids, I mean, these are contractors we've worked with before, and
yes,
I've been obviously happy with their
yes, all
service.
3 of them.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor of approving the bid award for Collegeway Elementary interior finishes and renovations, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Any nays? No. Motion carries. Next, we will move to the next action item, bid award for the new elementary school at Clay Center Road. Again, Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. I'll start with this total bid award is $26,980,500. And you have the list of contractors in front of you. As a matter of fact, JB Contractors, the one you just awarded the bid for, is the general trades contractor on this project as well. So, and again, we're really having difficulty getting interest in projects, and that's happening all over the state. There's the full employment situation is such that it's difficult to find contractors that are even in a position to bid work, even large amounts. You'll see in some of these bid categories that are upwards of $3.5 million may have two bidders. That's just not typical with what happens. So, but it's just the condition of the market right now. So on this school, you may recall that we've awarded bids on two other times, one in July and one in October. First for site work and then structural steel. So the total bids for this school is $33,802,171. And so that is over both our, we had an estimate at design development that you may recall, and we're about $4.7 million over that. Now again, that's in the context of over $30 million, but still, that's significant. And then at final design, we're just under $2.4 million over the final design. And it's just the state of the market conditions. I at least have not seen anything like this in my career, and this is not a criticism of our construction manager. Simply the being able to look at previous jobs and prices and so forth just isn't working these days, because literally the pricing is changing almost every day. And as I said, that's not just here. Everybody that I've talked to, even our local libraries, concerned about their project for the same reason. But nevertheless, that's the state of the economy. This is will be a very fine elementary school, and I know the community and the board will be very proud of it. But the cost is concerning. We will have funds to cover this cost. We have not yet sold the large bond issue. You may recall that we sold a general obligation bond in 2019, but the larger lease rental bond for this school as well as Carmel Elementary will be sold in the first quarter of 2020. And so, but we don't, of course, have the bids for Carmel Elementary School yet, but I think it's likely that we will need funds beyond the bond issue. And so we are and need to be in a position when those bonds are sold to assure bondholders that we do have sufficient funds to build a building, and we do. But of course, most of it will come from the bond issue, but it would also be necessary to use a couple of options that we have. One is to delay some projects from the 2019 GO bond, and another would be to utilize some of our recurring funds in our operating fund. And so, but I am most likely going to recommend that in early 2020, most likely in 2020, that we'll consider selling a smaller, most likely a general obligation bond, because while we do have the funds at hand, it would be significant if we chose to use those funds for this project rather than what we anticipate using them for. It would affect technology, for example, in a significant way, and some other projects that are truly needed. So we'll discuss that further, of course, but I would assure you that we do have the funds to do the project. and certainly have access to funds, but the pricing is higher than what we would have anticipated.
Before we move to questions, can I have a motion to approve the bid award for the new elementary school at Carmel Clay Center Road?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll move to discussion or questions. Layla?
Yes, first question, well, you gave two options
Mhm.
for covering this, I'm assuming it's $4 million you're talking about.
Yes, we won't know the total amount until we receive bids on the second school.
Okay, so one was related projects on the 2019 GEO bond,
Mhm.
and you mentioned technology was a portion of that bond.
Yes.
That might not be the best. What was the second option?
We would also have the ability to use some of our operational fund revenue, which previously would have been our capital projects fund primarily.
Okay.
Now it's that and transportation, all that together, you'll recall. But it's the same thing there. Those are also the funds that we use for technology, but also for ongoing and ongoing maintenance, minor renovation projects, and so forth.
So there's actually, and then there was the third option.
Well, third option would be to consider selling a bond issue. We won't literally need the funds because this project isn't finished until July of '21. But we would likely consider a bond issue in '20 as opposed to '21. I would emphasize that none of this discussion has a negative impact on the tax rate. These bonds, as you know, or the large bond issue that will cover the majority of costs for this school and the Carmel Elementary School, will not raise our tax rate because we have other debt coming off and so forth, and it's part of the management that we do with our taxes and tax rates. And that will continue to be true. While this is not insignificant, if we put it in perspective, these schools are over $60 million combined, and so not minimizing the issue in any way, but it is very manageable fiscally in terms for the school district.
Well, and I appreciate that. I think our concern initially was this hasn't happened to us before, so this seems like a considerable amount of money.
Yes.
When in 2020, or when are we going to have the bids?
We'll have the bids in
school?
January.
Okay.
Yeah, January for this project.
Okay, and then if we were going to go the avenue of a smaller GEO bond, when would we be looking at that?
Haven't gotten to that point yet because we know we've got some latitude.
Okay.
We would need it before, I'll say the spring of '21.
Okay.
But we haven't gotten to the specifics yet, but sometime between now and then, and I think it'd be maybe more likely it'd be in '20 than '21.
Okay, thank you.
Pam?
Yeah, I may have misunderstood, but you were saying that this particular bid for just this school is $4 million over?
Over the design development estimate, yes.
So what is the one for Carmel Elementary then also $4 million over?
Well, we haven't bid that one yet, so that's what we don't know.
Okay, so there's a possibility that we could be $8 million over what we initially thought.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not real excited about that, but, and the general trades, when you gave an explanation before about that, you said it was demolition?
On that small project, this is as you can see, much more significant than that.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because there's no demolition in this building.
Right. This, generally, when you talk about general trades, it's on a smaller level. You'd think of like somebody that's doing framing and doors and.
Well, better be, because it's $7 million, almost
Well, you might
$8
think
million
of like carpentry, where you can see it's not masonry and it's not the roofing and so forth.
It's all site concrete work, ball field construction, base work, doors, frames, hardware.
Some floor finishes.
Okay.
Asphalt paving.
Thank you, Roger. Katie?
Can you just confirm for those who may be watching that this would not have anything to do with the most recent referendum? The money that comes from the recent referendum does not go into as far as fund accounting goes?
That's correct. This is totally separate from that.
Okay. Thank you.
Lynn?
And can you remind us again when the construction on this new elementary and then the one at Carmel Elementary start?
So site work's actually already started for this school, and they will start construction pretty much when materials are available and weather permitting and so forth. But as soon as the weather breaks, you'll see a lot going on pretty quickly. And then Carmel Elementary, we're awarding bids in early January, and so it'll be the same thing. They as soon as the weather permits, they'll get started as quickly as they can.
Thank you. I think it's important to note that, while these numbers are higher than two sets of estimates, and while we are working to build the highest quality school, that there were some options that we considered that we decided, as we've moved in the process, not to spend that money on in order to be fiscally responsible and, build really what we need. And I think it's just maybe important to kind of acknowledge that. If you want to say something, that's fine. If not, we don't know the details.
At design development, we were in a position where it did result in us really reviewing the project, and we did make some cutbacks. One of the things that happens when you find yourself in a situation like this, I at least believe you have to be very careful, because I think the worst thing we could do is to compromise the building to where we spend millions of dollars and then we're not happy with the building, and because trying to make changes after the fact is really expensive, and so you either maybe do that, or in some cases, worse yet, you have a building that's really not fully supporting your educational program. And so we've tried very hard not to do that, but at the same time, we certainly intend to be fiscally responsible, and so we did cut back on some things at the design development. When you get to final design, then it's very difficult, because about the only thing that you can reasonably change are things like finishes. So you start putting, changing floor finishes or carpet, and that is not where the money's at in a big commercial building. It's in the structural and the design and the roof and so forth. And so to have a very quality building and start cutting back on the finishes and so forth is just not something we would recommend.
Well, thank you, and we know that you and Ron and the rest of our team, this is not the first building that you built, and while every building has different issues, we know that while the economy may be good for contractors, it's bad for us. So we understand that. So any other questions, Pam?
Yes, I just want to know, how often will we receive updates on the building and how they're progressing?
I don't have off the top of my head, you're talking about a schedule to the board? Yeah. I don't know off the top of my head, but probably, it's probably less frequent than that, because we want to have enough change from the time before.
Well, I mean, just pictures of progress.
Yeah, we'll certainly have that. In fact, we may have some of that on even on our webpage. Mm-hmm.
I'm just hoping our change orders aren't huge.
Yeah. Well, one thing about new construction is unlike a renovation, you don't have, things that are oftentimes hidden or whatever where that you wouldn't have been able to see before the fact.
Any other questions? All right, we'll now vote on the bid award for the new elementary school at Carmel Clay Center Road. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Next, we will move to the final action item for tonight's meeting, not the final item for the meeting, adopting a resolution to establish a school safety referendum fund and a school safety debt service fund. Again, Mr. McMichael.
Thank you. Since the safety referendum passed, it is necessary to now establish a fund to put the money in. And we're actually proposing the establishment of two funds. I know there's some questioning about the second. The first is just the referendum fund, safety fund, and the second fund is the referendum debt service fund. And with regard to that fund, it's highly unlikely that we'll actually use that fund. But when Church and Hiddle wrote the resolution for us, they included that, and I did talk to Seamus about that, and the feeling is that the statute provides for that, and that fund would only be used if we sold bonds and had a debt to repay. And while that's allowable under the statute, our question on the referendum on the ballot was more narrow, was not as broad as the statute permitted, and so we don't anticipate selling bonds if we need to do like capital improvements, and we're doing some now. We're doing an entry, for example, at Woodbrook Elementary School, but we are doing that with bonds. So we're doing that with bonds, but we do it the traditional route. In that case, it's a part of that general obligation bond that we sold. And but that's the reason for the second fund. But we will be using the first fund, of course. And again, I'll state it one more time that in setting up this fund, the safety referendum, the revenue from that is only for the uses stated in the question that was voted on, and that's very specific.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve action item to adopt a resolution to establish a school safety referendum fund and a school safety debt service fund?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Lynn. Questions or discussion? Lynn?
So just to clarify that the school safety debt service fund is for school safety, but is not related to referendum.
It is related to the referendum. If we were to use the safety referendum funds to repay a bond issue that was sold to provide for specific items specific to safety that would be that are permissible under the safety referendum statute. But then we would, if that were the case, then we would use the referendum funds to make those debt payments.
Thank you.
Pam?
Okay, so just clarify one more time. So all referendum money will be going into the referendum fund.
Correct.
And will only be used to pay in the debt service fund if we have to pay back a bond.
Yes.
Okay.
A bond for something, specifically for a safety item.
Right, but I just want to make sure that none of the referendum money is going into the debt service unless we repay something.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Other questions? I guess I have at least two questions, and I apologize for not submitting them in advance. So
right.
The first, the third whereas spells out exactly what the voters approved. And then at the bottom of the page, there's actually a whole list of 9 other things, which I would assume are what the statute says.
That's correct.
I mean, is there, and you already just said that we're only going to do what the voters approved, so is there a reason to have all that other language in there? And then I guess my second question is there really, does this need to be approved before the end of the year? I just think the concern that has been expressed on the board about the debt service fund, even though we're not intending to use it, whether we need that language in there.
Okay. I can't answer most of your questions, but I can say to you is this is the proposed resolution that our attorneys, drafted and recommended. And having received this, I had occasion to speak personally to Seamus Boyce, and I asked him about the debt, because I think one board member had already asked a question about the one fund, and so the response was he simply included it because it was he's kind of following what the statute called for, and I think the feeling is that we have lots of funds, for example, at the state level they're all approved funds, but we don't use them unless we have a particular need. And so it was not an extensive conversation. I suspect I don't know. I assume that he could change the resolution if the board would desire.
Well, and I apologize for throwing it at you.
That's okay.
At this point, I don't know if, I understand that the resolution covers more than we might need to. I don't know, I just wonder if...
I could share this with you, that the Safety Debt Service Fund would not be established unless the board had chosen to sell bonds and go through that entire, which, as you know, is multiple steps. You'd first have to sell bonds and have them and go through the process and have public hearings and so forth and have those approved. And then at that point, when the bonds were closed, then we would need a fund to put the money in. And so there would be a rather lengthy process of selling bonds before there'd be any purpose for this fund.
Pam, go ahead.
Don't we already have a debt service fund?
Yes.
Okay, so what's the difference between this debt service fund and the one we currently have?
This fund is specific to safety items that would be done in accordance with the statute, and it would be paying for debt that was paying for those safety projects.
Well, couldn't we already pay for safety projects out of the current debt service fund?
Yes.
So why does it have to have the title Safety Debt Service Fund?
Is it accounting?
Well, I think what happens is with this fund, with this referendum, it has a maximum tax rate.
Yes.
And so our current debt service fund, which covers any and all debt that we have,
right,
does not have a tax rate. It has no limit other than the limitation of the public being willing to support it. But there is no cap on a tax rate. The tax rate's established as to whatever is necessary to repay the debt. And so that's one difference. And so the legislators saw fit when they created this language to create a safety referendum fund to include both personnel type expenses like school resource officers as well as capital expenses for equipment or even facility modifications. And so in the end, it's both local property tax is where the revenue is coming from. But they're very similar, except the one significant difference is that the safety referendum does have a maximum tax rate of 10 cents.
Okay. what are we paying the entrance to Woodbrook out of at this point in time?
We're paying for that from the 2019 general obligation bonds.
Right.
Which will be repaid
In the
as a
debt service fund.
Correct.
Okay, so it's already being done.
Yes.
So it's not called a safety referendum or a safety debt service fund.
No, absolutely not. That's correct.
Okay, so I'm still confused as to the difference between a debt service, safety debt service fund and our current debt service fund.
I might be able to shed some light on this. So, as we went through the school safety referendum process, when we were making decisions, we decided that really what you just said, Pam, that we did not want, we did not have a need to use school safety referendum to like redo entryways and to do cameras or other physical modifications. We specifically targeted funding streams for personnel, for mental health support, for resource officers and that sort of thing. So that's why, and training. So that's why when the question came on the ballot, we said, this is what we're going to spend this money for. So now the statute has the capabilities, there's 9 different things in that statute that's on that resolution. We are only really using 3 of them. So we didn't even contemplate using any kind of things for structures of buildings or any kind of physical things like that, because we have exactly what you said. We have a debt service fund. We have the capabilities to buy bonds. Roger does a fantastic job of managing tax rates and controlling all that. Carmel Clay is in a very advantageous situation where we have a lot of bonds rolling off from the past, which brings capacity to make those things. That's why you see that mid-year cycle, facelift on our buildings. That's why our buildings look so good in the district, because of the Mr. Farron and Roger's plan on doing that. So really what you're looking at from a resolution standpoint is strictly to code. Just like when we did the referendum question, we went strictly by code because we knew that wouldn't be changed because it's code. And so what I think Churchill and Antrim has done is given us this resolution according to code. Just because the code says you can do things doesn't mean we're going to do that. And because we said we wouldn't, we aren't. So really, we're only going to use the referendum fund, and we're not.
Well, we can. I mean, I asked that question.
And we won't use the other fund, but the resolution is based on just everything in the statute. So the question from Mr. Kirshner, do we need it? No. Is it in the statute? Yes. Is the resolution based on statute? Yes. So, we would have to go back and have Churchill and review and see, is there anything we have to have based on the code? Do we have to have that in there, or is that something we can remove? So I guess the question for you is, do you want to go ahead and approve the resolution with, that's been built according to code, that we won't use parts of it, or do you want us to wait and then take it back and see if we can remove things? So we may bring back the exact same thing back to you, or we may bring it back with, maybe we can remove the debt service fund piece. I just don't know, and Roger doesn't either, whether that's,
I just know what was in what we had on the ballot and what we told everybody we were spending the money on, and we never really said we were going to spend it on anything that was capital projects.
Correct. And we're not. I also asked that question because, as Mike pointed out, the resolution restates the question that we had on the ballot, but it also restates the statute. And so the question was, I thought I knew the answer, but I wanted to be sure, are we bound by the question and limited by what's in the question,
right,
or are we limited by what's in the statute? And the answer was, you're limited by what's in the question. And so we will not be doing things that otherwise would be acceptable under the statute. We will only be doing those things that were specifically spelled out in the question. And so, Pam, just one other comment on the debt service. There would be communities that they wouldn't have bonding authority. Remember, there is a maximum levy or an indebtedness for general obligation bonds. So you could have a community that would be maxed out and when you're maxed out and doing big projects like an elementary school, then you do lease rental bonds, and that's a whole other category. But a district that could be maxed out on their general obligation bonds, but still have the authority to go have further indebtedness for something specifically for safety items, and that may have been why the language was written the way it was, because again, there's many communities that do not have the property value that we have, and therefore they don't have the they're much more restricted than we are.
Anybody else? I mean, I guess my personal opinion is, I think similar to Pam's, that we asked the voters to make an approval, and while what we understand that we're limited to what they've approved, adding all these things that the statute may permit just adds a potential layer of confusion. And I'd personally rather be clear, I don't want to delay this if we needed to have it done before the end of the year. But it's just, to me, confusing that we've got 9 other things plus this debt safety fund that at this point we're not going to use. So my opinion is I would take a motion to table this, to go back to council with our concerns and bring it back either at the first meeting in January or the second, if that's
I don't think that's a problem. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe it's a problem because, again, we won't receive any money because it's coming from property tax until, later in 2020. Certainly, we won't have it by January or February. So couldn't hardly imagine that would be a problem.
Okay. And if that is a problem and we need to deal with it, we'll deal with it. So at this point, I would accept a motion to table action item to adopt a resolution to establish a school safety fund referendum.
I would like to do that, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Katie. All in favor of tabling this item, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you. This action item is tabled. Again, I will apologize, Roger, for throwing this at you at this last moment. Next, we'll move to discussion items. The first discussion item is the naming of the new elementary school on Clay Center Road. Dr. Beresford.
Well, this should be kind of fun. Ms. Novus, could you put up the slides up there so we can take a look at that? Well, we've had some exciting times with, and I sent you some photos, and we'll keep updating the project website with different progress. And as we were talking, okay, so as we have been working on this, we decided it's probably prime time to go ahead and make a recommendation to name that new elementary school on Clay Center Road, so we can stop saying that that new elementary school on Clay Center Road. On October the 14th, at the workshop session for the board, we had a nice presentation on the early history of Carmel Clay schools written by A.J. Wright with the Carmel Historical Society. And his research found that on September 25th of 1912, Clay Township opened a new brick school on the northeast corner of 116th Street and Clay Center Road. The school was named Clay Center and had 4 classrooms on the main floor. And if we could take a look at that picture, there we go. There it is. So it had 4 classrooms on the main floor, which I think would be probably downstairs in that case, and then it had a large assembly room on the second floor. And the location of that was on Clay Center. Clay Center School was just south of where our new elementary school is being built. So it's kind of this historical information that came about, and so this may be like the spoiler alert, or maybe the worst kept secret in Carmel but based on this historical information, we want to recommend the new elementary school on Clay Center Road be named, should we do a drum school? Clay Center Elementary School. So CEE, and there's the map up there where you can get a look and just see really how close in proximity Clay Center Elementary School is where our site is, how close that is to the original Clay Center Road Elementary School. So that would be my recommendation, that we make that decision and to name that school. And then once that occurs, we'll start working through the process of, that we have to register a new building with the Department of Education, get a school number assigned, and there's a process to that. And then also, we'll start thinking about mascots and colors and involve students with that, and the community. So that'll be a lot of fun forthcoming. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention, was a recommendation to name it Clay Center Elementary School.
Well, thank you. Very exciting. So we will act on that recommendation at a later meeting, but do we have any questions for Dr. Beresford? Or discussion? Katie?
Can you go back to the picture? I just wanted to see it. Do you know, and I have to finish reading the book, what happened to the school building? Beside that it was built in 1912?
I do not know. I do not know I don't know the demise of the original Clay Center Elementary School, other than there's an awful lot of construction. If you go back to that map, it could be that a roundabout took it. But,
good one.
Most likely, it probably aged out and had to be taken down.
The original one looks pretty good. I mean, for 1912. You guys have your work cut out for you. This is what you have to live up to right here.
Yeah, our new one's not going to look like that, but it'll be highly functional.
Pam?
You don't know if anything was, I know they saved a lot of things with the Carmel Historical Society. Did they ever save a cornerstone or anything like that from this building?
Not that I'm aware of, but that's certainly a question we could ask.
That would be kind of cool to
that would be
have
interesting,
something.
or a brick or something.
Yeah.
That might be a nice thing to add to the project.
Or we could pretend it was a cornerstone. Look, a cornerstone.
I don't think the Historical Society does pretending. They're pretty much sticklers for research.
Well, it's impressive we have a photo. I mean, that's amazing.
It's a very clear photo, too. A lot of times the older photos are not in that good a quality.
Yeah, that could be displayed in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to all the fun that comes along with a new building. After we just talked about some of the not fun stuff. Next, we have the discussion item proposal for the school day changes for 2020-2021 school year. As I stated earlier in the meeting, the recommendation of changes to the start and end time of elementary schools and district-wide late start times for 2020 and 2021 is being postponed. We are still getting a report from Dr. Beresford, and we'll have the opportunity to ask questions this evening, but the team will continue to gather and evaluate feedback from our stakeholders on this topic, and we'll look forward to a recommendation sometime during the spring semester. After stealing your thunder, Dr. Beresford.
I think you've about covered it. We've been going through this process for a good long while, and we had our meeting where we did the presentation on the results that we got from our feedback study that we did, and this actually has been going on for a couple of years. It was this whole project and idea started before I got here. But as we got closer to making a recommendation, we found more and more questions. And particularly around transportation, we had quite a few concerns that came out of our transportation department. We wanted to do some further looking there and really break down into more details to see what exactly the impact would have on our drivers and on our start and end times and the whole transportation system. Along with that, we've been having conversations back and forth with our Teachers Association and looking at some positive things we might be able to accomplish through this change as well. And I think we just need a little more time to be able to kind of massage that and make sure we're all on the same page, and also gather some questions, not just about transportation, but some of the other logistical part of it. Because I just, at the end of the day, we just were not prepared to give a recommendation at this time to be able to answer all your questions. So we're still going to keep working the process, and until we get all the answers we need so we can make the best decision for our students and our community here. So I'll have more on it later, but as of right now, we're going to just have to move methodically through all the detail of it, and I'll be filling in along the way as what we can find out. Some things I can share with you that we determined. One was, after getting a lot of feedback from a whole host of stakeholders, was that we should shorten the amount of the delayed start. We originally had put that out as an hour, and we believe that currently the high school does a 45-minute delayed start. So the most current thinking on that right now is to delay that down to a 45-minute time period. So that's one of the changes. We also were looking at maybe starting the elementary school 5 minutes earlier than originally intended, which would be a total of 10 minutes earlier, to have a larger window between the elementary route and the secondary route. If that's advantageous. We're still continuing to evaluate that, and so I don't really have, we'd worked off of the 45-minute window in between routes, and that we may need to do some adjustments to that based on what we determine when we get into the detail of the routing and that sort of thing. So those are some of the components we're working with. We've also been exploring things like a lot of the parents were concerned about disruption to their morning, especially with the elementary late start. And we talked a lot about that, about maybe we could offer some low-cost or no-cost child care for parents who really need to drop their student off on time, that morning. So that might be a possibility. And we've Roger's met with the Parks Department about that, and we also have some personnel of our own that could possibly do some supervision there, all the way up to K-8 maybe, or early childhood 8. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of different options to try to relieve some of the concerns that we had raised through the process, and we'll continue to do that and keep. Like I said, we're going to keep working it until I come up with enough detail that I can answer all your questions and we can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you. We recognize that this is a big change, and we're doing it for a number of reasons that the evidence supports and what's in the best interest of our students. I know we've shared some questions back and forth before the meeting. Does anybody have questions that they'd like to discuss right now? Pam?
Sorry, I seem to be full of questions tonight. I just have a couple of concerns. What would happen to the teacher drivers, especially if they're elementary? They would only drive an elementary route and not a high school route, or what would happen with them?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things we want to look at, is how would that work? Right now, with the current way it works with our elementary school is nestled in between the secondary day.
Right.
It makes it possible for elementary teachers to do that. Secondary teachers can't. In that case, we would almost have to have a buddy system, like an elementary teacher would deliver the bus, and then that bus would then be picked up by a secondary teacher who would have to do it. But even then, there's a logistical problem because you have to bring the bus back to the elementary somehow or another. So those are the kind of details. That's exactly the kind of details we're looking at. What is there a strategy or a way to do those types of things? or maybe do a one-way routing kind of thing. But the problem is, we only have a limited number of buses, so we just can't park them all over, So there's a logistical side of it we're trying to work out those bugs.
Okay, and I have one more question. Do we have any idea how many bus drivers would be impacted by this particular change, and how many we might anticipate losing?
Well, that was one of the concerns that kicked up, and it's really hard to put a number on that. There's a lot of folks, what do we say, 100 drivers that have jobs, either between routes, like a good half of them probably work in our cafeterias and maybe instructional assistants, and others have jobs right after their routes. They have like an evening job as well. So it's very individualized. So be able to sort that out. First off, we need, this is one of the reasons why I want to do the delays. We have to have some concrete information on how it's actually going to play out. And then we can meet with those people individually and see what impact will that have on you. For instance, maybe someone could run an elementary route, but they got to get to work before they could do their secondary route. Or it could be some people may be in a position where their job will give them some time off, or change their time schedule to a later date so they can accommodate that. But it is a difference. It's going to affect some drivers, but I can't. It's hard for us to put a number on that because they really don't have a good idea about how that is going to impact. And until we get to that level of detail, I can't make a recommendation. That makes sense. What I did share with everybody is we're always going to go with our number one guiding principle. We're going to do what's best for our students, and we're going to do everything we can do. So when we look at big changes like this and big processes like this, the first thing we do is what's right for kids. And we will make our decision based on what is right for kids. Not always what's convenient for the adults in the organization, not always what public opinion is one way or another. We're going to do what's right for the kids. Number two, we got to make sure it works. We have to go through all the logistics and make sure that we don't have unintended consequences, and that we perform at a high level. And then number three, not to be forgotten, is we have to check and make sure we can afford it. And that's the last one on our list over there is our guiding principle about, we know we have to watch our dollars and make sure we can afford it. And that's kind of the process that we'll continue to follow. And so that's, right now we're kind of in phase 2, and we're going to keep working that until we have a good understanding of what exactly we're talking about. And I know you guys have been hitting me with questions, and if I can't answer your question, then we haven't done enough work to be able to move forward. So that's why we're at where we are at right now.
Thank you.
Katie?
I just want to say thank you for being willing to stop, because sometimes it's not easy to be like, we're just not ready yet, and I really appreciate that for this and other things that Carmel does to just be able to get the facts. So thank you for being willing to say, we're just not there yet.
Well, thank you, Katie, because I was going to thank him for, when he's not ready to make a recommendation, we don't want a recommendation. So thank you, and we're excited to see where this goes, and if we can make it work, we will, and if not, we'll deal with it as well, too. So moving on, next on the agenda for discussion is first reading of policy 2220, staff evaluation. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. So this evening, for a first reading, I bring staff evaluation policy 2220 for discussion. And the policy committee reviewed this policy. We looked at, we made some changes to the policy that is in line with our current practices as well as the legislation, and so those changes are outlined in that policy.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Layla?
Have we shared this with the CTA already?
No, we have not. This policy, what we did was we outlined some things that we currently are not doing.
Okay.
And that's not our practice, the things that were lined out. So all of that has been shared with CTA. They know what our current practices are. But in here, this was inaccurate information in our policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Layla, any other questions? No. Next on the agenda is discussion item, first reading of policy 8120, volunteers. Again, Dr. Dudley.
Yes, this policy, the policy committee reviewed this, and this was also recommendations from our student service director, Mr. Woodward. One of the things that came up is that we have not only volunteers in the building, but then we also have quite a few lunchroom visitors that we have visitors that come in and they're in the cafeteria. We do have other adults in there, but there's a lot of students in there if you've ever visited in the lunchroom. So one of the changes in this policy is that we require background checks for all of our volunteers. This policy would also require background checks for any visitors that are coming in to the building, such as in the lunchroom visitors. And so the other change in this policy is currently we require those background checks for every 5 years, and this policy, the change would make it every 3 years for our volunteers as well as our visitors.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Katie?
Can you let me know, we recently changed our companies of the background checks, is that correct? And
Yes.
how much is that right now?
It depends on where your background check needs to go. In Indiana, I believe it's around $35, but if you've ever lived in the state of New York, it's $200, and that's from the state of New York charging that.
Okay.
So it really depends on where you've lived. If you've lived around a lot, it may be
And
more
then
expensive.
when would this, if it passes, when would this become in effect?
If this passes, this would become in effect. We would share that they need to have background checks as soon as it passes, but the every 3 years would turn over for this next year.
I just mean like, so grandma and grandpa come to eat lunch. At what point do we say, sorry, grandma and grandpa, you need to have background checks?
Right. So if grandma and grandpa, like that was one of the things we discussed with our principals. So if grandma and grandpa come from Oregon and they're here for a one-time thing, the schools would make other arrangements. So if they wanted to come and have lunch, then maybe they'd have lunch in the office with their grandson rather than being down in the cafeteria. So we would accommodate that as best we could.
And then as far as everyone else goes, we would just start getting that information out that from whatever on, they need to start having that done.
Correct. We would, as soon as if the policy passes after the second reading, then we would make sure that we communicated that with all of our stakeholders and got that information out to everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
I do want to point out, I think that the cost is less than that, because I think that's the employee cost, and we'll bring that back to you with the exact cost of what the volunteer background check, because I think it's probably half of that, maybe, if it's the way I remember it. But my memory's not as good as it used to be. And then, and I think Amy explained it pretty good. A lot of times we'll have people come in that aren't properly credentialed, and so we make accommodations, for those folks, just to make sure that they're supervised if they don't have a background check.
So that being said, I'm thinking about in the elementary program, we have lots of opportunity for like the Who's Your Book Club and for Grandparents' Day, when they're there all day long and they're all throughout the school. Are those days that we will have exceptions, or those individuals as visitors will all need to have a background check?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by they're all day long. Like if we have a special convocation, or we have like a Veterans Day, or a grandparents' morning, like donuts with the grandparents or something like that, that would be an event that was happening. We would have many adults in there with their children attending that event. So that's separate than a visitor of this one family, this one parent's coming into the lunchroom.
Okay.
So those would be two separate pieces.
Okay, so some of these bigger activities that, say, I'm thinking of all the things that I've taken lots of people to, or we've invited people for, 4 or 5 challenge, we'll have a, I don't know, book review, and so it's just like an open house and things like that. So those are an exception. Those are events. This is specific for daily activities?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So Roger was mentioning they're invited in as opposed to they want to come in to visit.
Like a basketball game or something, you know, they're not all checked as visitors to that event.
Thank you. I guess I just want to point out, I guess I point out in a question. So there's a sentence that says, the report must be reviewed before the volunteer visitor can enter the building. So there's a typo in visitor. And then my question really is the report, is that really referring to the criminal background, which was used to be called a report and is now, we're calling it a check? I guess it was called a check. Now, is it that is the report the background check, I guess is my question.
Yes.
So do we need to say that the background check must be reviewed before the volunteer can enter? So obviously getting a background check is not enough. It needs to be provided and reviewed by somebody. Just thoughts I throw out there as part of discussion.
Yeah, typically the way that goes is it's electronic in many ways, and anytime any kind of a crime comes up on a background check that's submitted to the system, it will flag that person, and then those will be carefully reviewed.
So Mike, are you suggesting the background check report must be reviewed? Is that?
I mean, that's fine. I just think it's unclear in that sentence what the report is.
Okay.
Katie?
I have two questions. The first one is, so it is something that someone, like a person, would actually look at besides a flag and, know, depending on, I mean, we have all different kinds of parents and all different kinds of backgrounds, so it's something that someone would look at to determine. And then also, I know that you have to do a bullying video in order to get that, but it doesn't mention that in here. Is that something that we would have them do?
So those very specific pieces would be in the administrative guidelines.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Next on the agenda is first reading of policy 9160, public attendance at school events. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. And so this policy actually came to our attention through another situation that was going on. But looking at the middle of the policy where it talks about service dogs, there's a change to service animals. And one thing that was in our policy was that the person may be asked to provide evidence of the dog certification for that purpose of being a service animal. And the law says that we cannot require that certification. So our attorney suggested that we just strike that sentence from the policy.
Katie.
So I keep thinking about the Delta flight and the peacock, where someone tried to bring a service peacock. Is there any sort of thing where we can have any sort of stipulation so that students, not that they would bring a peacock to a sporting event, but it's a great idea? Or is that something that we would just have to deal with when the time comes?
Yeah, service animal. I think we'd have to
okay.
Look at that piece.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I know that we show additions and strikes, and I just want to confirm, obviously, that the purple language, which you just talked about, CCA, that's just for our notice that's why we're striking it, and that will obviously not be part of
that is correct.
The policy.
Once the policy gets adopted,
that
those
goes out.
Strikeouts all get reverted.
And the purple
goes away. That is for your information, yes.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Any other questions? No. And obviously, as Katie said, service animals are a hot topic now for disability rights and advocates. So we appreciate that. Thank you. Next, we will move to reports. The first report is the student data report. And I guess before we get to that, normally we have a monthly financial report. My understanding is that This meeting is early in the month, so we will not have that. So we will let Roger off the hook for that, even though I gave him a hard time earlier. So we'll move to student data report, English language learners. Dr. Dudley.
Yes, thank you. So this evening, I'm going to share with you some information about some of our students, our English language learners, and the new terminology. For people that have been in education for a while, you've heard ESL, ENL, so English as a second language, English as a new language, English language learners, and now the new terminology is monolingual learners, because they may be learning more than one language. MLL. But we're still using the term ELL, which is the term that's what is currently in fashion. But as we went to the WIDA conference, and that was the terminology that they used in the new, and also that's what you'll read in the most current literature and research.
So is it monolingual language learners or just monolingual learners?
I think it's language learners. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in Carmel Clay Schools, we have 965 students that are our English language learners, and they have 68 native languages for those 965. So we do have a wide variety of languages, that first language being spoken in Carmel Clay Schools, and so we are very diverse in that area. So as we look at the top languages that are spoken by our English language learners, Spanish is the highest percentage at 25.7% of our English language learners. Spanish is their first language, and that's followed by Arabic at 13.5%. And you can see the other, the breakdown of the other languages, and then the 34.6% are all of the other languages combined. So as we look at our the number of English language learners, over the years, over the past 5 years, the total number or the percentage of our students has not changed very significantly. We did have a little bit of a bump. We went from 5% to 6% this year when you look at all of our English language learners. But what is significant here is the change in our limited proficiency ELL students, or our students that are at levels 1 through 4.9, and I'm going to talk about what those different levels are. So our students are, when they come to us and they fill out a home language report, if there's anything as a first language other than English on there, that we are required to give them a proficiency test, and we first do a WIDA screening, and then in January, each year for all of our English language learners, we give them the WIDA access test. And so that is measuring their language acquisition. And then they get a score between 1 and 6. And so our limited language learners get a score between 1 and 4.9, and if they score at a 5, they are considered to be proficient in the English language. So what has changed, though, over the 5 years is the number of students that are from that 1 to 4.9%. So we have a 44% increase in the number of limited proficiency. So even though the total has not changed as much, the students that are at those levels 1, 2s, 3s, and 4s has increased quite a bit in the last 5 years. So here are the 6 different levels, as I said, where you're looking at a student that is at a level 1, they're just entering. So a student that comes in, they use a lot of pictures, graphic representations, they may use words and phrases. They ask a lot of WH questions and statements with visual graphic support. So that it would be our students that have the most limited English. And then as you can see the continuum as it moves through, when they get to that level 5, those students, their oral and their written language is approaching what is comparable to their English proficient peers. And then at that level 6, it is comparable to their English proficient peers. So typically it takes at least 6 to 8 years to become completely proficient. Many of our students, though, come to us with some language acquisition where, and you'll see in the next slide, they're not all coming in at a level 1. Many of them come in and they might be assessed at a level 2 or a level 3, and then they move through that continuum. Some move through faster than others, and it just depends on the individual student. So where are our students? And these are all of our students that are level 1s through level 4.9s. And so you can see that in our elementary schools, they're scattered throughout our elementary schools. We do have the most limited proficiency students at Orchard Park with 105 students, and that's the highest percentage. And then you can see as compared to Mohawk, where we have 9 students. So it is quite a range where our students are in all different buildings throughout. And then you can see the range as far as from levels 1 through levels 4 in this graphic. And then here is our secondary students, and you can see where at the high school we have 109 English language learners that are limited proficient. And so when you compare that, though, to the percentage, that percentage is much lower when you compare that to our 5,200 students there. And so then you can see the range from at our 3 middle schools where Creekside we have 32 students up to Carmel Middle where we have 55 students. So they're about evenly based, but you still look at the different needs as far as the levels that they're at. But even those graphics are fairly even. So one of the things that we're very excited about is, well, first a new requirement from the state is that all of our English learners will be required to have a teacher of record by the year 2022, that the teacher of record either holds an E&L license or meets the requirements to be an English learner teacher of record. And so that's with even more extensive training in language acquisition. So one of the things in response to this that we're very excited about is that we have partnered with Ball State, and we are offering the E&L licensure through Ball State, and where we will pay for that for our teachers that are willing to get their E&L licensure, and we're paying for that through grants. So we have 2 different grants that we receive for our English learners. We receive a Title III grant, which is federal dollars, and then we receive a non-English speaking grant, or NESP, which is state dollars. And so we're using those grant funds to help pay that tuition. So it's a really great deal for our teachers that would like to do this. And then we're also making it very convenient. The cohorts, it'll be a combination of on-site and online classes, and they will start here in January, and we have 50 teachers that have signed up for this. So that's exciting to see, and so the cohorts will meet Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays starting in January, and as they go through, they'll have both on-site and then online as well, and they'll have their licensure by May of 2021. And so to get the licensure, it's 5 courses that the teachers need to take, and so they'll take them in the spring semester, throughout the summer, next fall, and next spring. And so that's very exciting that we have so many teachers that are very interested in this.
Are those teachers scattered throughout all of our schools? So
Yes.
we are equal. Okay,
Yes.
good.
And so with that, I will take any questions you have. Yes.
Yeah, I was just interested because the chart that showed Orchard Park students, and we have the most students, or the most students were at Orchard Park who were limited, yet Orchard Park goes to Creekside, correct?
No, they go to Carmel Middle.
They go to Carmel Middle now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Carmel Middle, can you go to that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the, okay.
So typically, though, as you look at the growth of our English learners, they may not be considered an English learner because these are only levels 1 through 4. So they may have moved to levels 5 or 6 by the time they get into middle school. So if they came to us in kindergarten, we would expect at least the students to make 1 year's worth of growth on the WIDA continuum. So if they came in at a level 1, we would expect them to be a level 2 in first grade, level 3.
Right.
And so then they wouldn't be counted.
Do we have many of them moving out by the time that they get to middle school? Do we lose very many of them?
We do have students that move in and move out, but it's not more typical than other students that are moving in and out.
Okay.
Layla?
The WIDA exam, do all the students take it year after year then in January?
So all students that are at level 1 through 4 are assessed on the WIDA exam, and the WIDA exam it's a combination. There's a computer-based exam that the students take, and then there also is a speaking part that is individually administered to the students. And so all students that are level 1 through 4 do take it each year, and then it is also goes up through. We have a K1 or a kindergarten, a 1-2, a 3-4, and so it's different exams for different levels.
Lynn?
You mentioned the new state requirement for staff. They require now an Indiana ENL license. So is this a new license, or is it an existing license they're just requiring teachers to have?
Okay, so it's not a new license. We do have some of our teachers have the certification, an ENL certification. However, what is the requirement that has changed is that all of our ENL students will need to be assigned a teacher of record. That might not be their only teacher. It's similar to our special needs students all have a teacher of record that makes sure that they look at the services for that child and they're an advocate for that child. So that's the change, and they either need to have the ENL license from the state, or they need to meet the English learner teacher of record rubric requirements, which when you look at that, the rubric, it has more intensive training for that teacher, professional development for that teacher.
And do you have idea right now how many we have right now of this met this new requirement?
Meeting the requirement, I do not, as far as on the rubric. We have very few English ENL certified teachers currently. We have a very small handful in the district. Meeting the requirement, we would have many more meeting the requirement, but I don't have a number for you.
Pam?
The teachers that are going through the certification, will they need to be speaking a specific, any language and be fluent in the language?
No. So when you get the English as a new language certification, you are teaching English, but you're not fluent in the partner language or the native language of the other students, because you could possibly be teaching students with 68 different languages.
Right, but I mean, do they need to be proficient in a language? I'm not saying all the languages, but
no.
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 Okay. And will they be having case conferences since they have a teacher of record?
That is not a requirement to have. You do need to have currently, and we currently have this, where it's not a case conference, but our students, all of our English learners have an ILP, or an individual language plan, and it looks at what accommodations do they need, what specific needs does each individual student need. It's not as formal as a case conference, but that is something that we share with the parent. And
so they still do go through that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And when a student that we test, how do we test their math abilities even though they can't communicate in English?
So on the WIDA exam, that's not assessing their math. That is only assessing their language. However, in class, so as
because I had a student that was really good in math but did not speak English.
Right. So when one of the pieces where we look at their different levels, and this is part of the training, but they call them WIDA can-do strategies. And so you look at where the student is at. So let's say the student is at a level 1. So how would they be expected to respond to show their learning? So they might show that using pictures or using labeling a picture, whereas a level 3 student may be responding using short sentences to share their learning. They may do something where the oral language may come before the written language, so they may share their learning by having a conversation with the teacher. So you really look at how do you have the students share their learning. So in math, how would they share their learning? Are they showing in a performance assessment on that learning, and how do we make sure that the student understands what we're asking, and how do we accommodate that? So there's a variety of strategies that we use to make sure that the student is learning the grade level content as well as the English language.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Dr. Dudley, again for adding the student report to our agenda. It amazes me what our teachers do every single day. It amazes me one step higher when they've got somebody that speaks one of 68 languages, and we don't even have somebody in the district that speaks that. So as always, they go above and beyond, and thank you and thank them. Next report is a legislative update. Layla.
Thank you, and there's not a lot going on yet, so yes, thank goodness. But Dr. Beresford and I have been fairly busy with our meetings. We did meet with Senator Sparks on the 4th and then J.D. Ford then on December 10th, and both were very supportive of our priorities. And surprisingly enough, when we bumped into Senator Sparks at State House, when we were there to see J.D. Ford, she was commenting that we must be doing something right because there's a lot of chatter about what we are interested in doing amongst her colleagues. So I viewed that as a very positive. Dr. Beresford is also, and I'm sure he's going to touch on it, he's met with the House Education Committee earlier this month as well. A couple other things, which was a surprise, so I'm kind of excited. We're having a phone conference this Wednesday with State Senator Stacy Donato from District 18, which is far north, Carroll, Cass, Fulton, and Miami counties. She is also on the Education Committee. So we are excited to have a phone conference with her. She will not be at our legislative luncheon. That'll be this Wednesday. Well, she's not from our area. But at any rate, she is on the committee, so we're going to have a phone conference. She already has our materials, and we're excited to really branch out and be that advocate for our public schools. The other thing I wanted to mention, Pam and I cannot go to the National School Board Association meeting in Chicago, so we are going to do 2 other activities, and they're back-to-back. We're going to go to the Equity Symposium in February, as well as the Advocacy Institute in February. And both of those are held by ISBA. They'll be in Washington, D.C. Or I'm sorry, NSBA, and they'll be held at Washington, D.C. And so we're going to go to those. I talked with ISBA. They're taking a team of individuals, and we are invited to participate as well. I'd ask what they typically do, and they're like, the more the merrier. So we are going, and it is open if others are available. It's the February 1st through the 5th. And then last but not least, we do have the Hamilton County Legislative Luncheon that will be this week, and I'm excited to attend. Mike, I think you're going to be there, and I'm not sure if you're Pam? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll have a full house.
Mm-hmm. Going north.
Yes, going north. And that's all I have to. Are there any questions? Great.
No, thank you, Layla. Looking forward to Wednesday. And what I've heard is it is going to be a really short session. Not only is it a non-budget year, but they've got to be done for the NCAA tournament.
Yes, it will end promptly on the 5th. I'm sorry, the 11th. Start on January 5th and on March 11th. And no budget. I know there was some discussion about perhaps opening the budget back up, and when we were at the legislative breakfast on Friday. We were told that is not going to be happening. So, no budget.
No budget. And we do have a speaker-elect, is that his title? I don't want to take it from your thunder, but we will be having a speaker-elect that will be at the Hamilton County Legislative Breakfast. So we had Representative Bosma before, so that's good. Thank you. Next is Carmel Clay Parks Department. Lynn.
Yes, I have a few items to report here. So as I reported last time, ESE is now ESE has formed a district-wide parent advisory committee for the ESE program, rather than having the committee at each individual school. So this new committee met on November 18th and attended by approximately 15 parents, guardians, and they serve as a valuable means here to give input and feedback to ensure the continued success of the ESE program. And continuing with the ESE here, the Parks Board, the Parks Department is extending the office space for ESE staff. So they renovated a former catering kitchen, and the construction will be completed before the end of the year. And lastly, about summer camp, a lot of our students attending the summer camps by the park. The brochure was posted online already, and the hard copies will be out soon. Summer camp registration begins at noon on January 7th, the first day of school. Some of the most popular camps here are expected to fill up within hours of opening.
Minutes.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Lynn? No? Well, thank you for continually keeping us updated on what goes on at Parks. Next is Superintendent's Report. Dr. Beresford.
Thank you, Mr. Kushner, and I appreciate your reports and good information there. I was able to meet with several superintendents with the House Committee, Education Committee, and I think there's just a lot of good conversations going on right now. Really, I think something that we've been communicating quite a bit is Indiana presently is not a teacher-friendly state, and it's not all about money. A lot of it's about just respect and also about letting us do our job. So a lot of communication we're having is about decoupling the the iLearn test from the evaluation system and let us administrators evaluate our staff, using that test as a data point among other data points. But that sort of thing, and again, we're going back to that 15 hours of externship, and I think there'll be some movement on that. And so I think we'll see some movement forward on some of the non-monetary things that really need to happen, with the goal in mind to make Indiana a place where people want to come to teach and where folks will want to go to college and be a teacher. So we'll keep working it. And I call him the speaker in waiting is Todd Houston, and he's represented over in Fishers, but we know Todd for a long time. I think he'll provide good leadership in that role, and so we're looking forward to maybe having a positive influence on things. Today, it's the first weather call of the year, and so I was up bright and early driving the roads of Carmel, and it did improved quite a bit as the morning went on, so I think it was a good decision, and especially for the first big snow of the year, to give our kids a little more daylight and a little more time to get ready. Did want you to know that that CCS families receive phone call and email for delays and cancellations. They can also sign up for text messaging by texting YES to 68453. Again, that's YES to 68453. And then also information will be posted on Facebook and Twitter. And as I told all the students that, as soon as I make a decision, I post it on Twitter. So if you want to know first, it's going to be early in the morning, but you'll see it there. So we'll see a little dicey weather tonight, so I'll be up early again to check out the roads for tomorrow. I wanted to say congratulations to Carmel High School's students. They're in the Carmel Esports Club, which won the Indiana High School Esports Network State Championship in 3 different games. This is a sports league that plays video games, And the Rocket League, Overwatch, and League of Legends, I've heard of one of those, were champions. And then a congratulations also to the students who placed second in the Hearthstone game. And I'm going to have to look these up to see what's going on with this stuff. But esports is growing in popularity this year, and this year's club at Carmel High School has over 100 members. So this is big, and it's also migrating the college. In the college campuses, esports is big as well. So I think the gamers of the world are finding some, some outlet for their interests there. Big congratulations to the Trojans at Clay Middle School, Team Avengers, and you heard me say this last year. Team Avengers are a great group of kids and teachers. They raised $19,105.81 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation this year. Just a crazy amount of money. And the students enjoyed visiting Smiley Morning Show, a radio station, to share the good news. Since 2014, the Avengers have donated more than $73,000 to Make-A-Wish. So we're real proud of this team, and we love seeing our students and staff giving back to the community and making special events for kids and families in need. Also wanted to give a big shout out for the CHS Culinary Arts second annual Winter Chef-tacular. And it was amazing. It was an enjoyable evening of delicious food and lively music. We had some cool jazz going on that night. And the proceeds from that event supports the Hamilton County Harvest Food Bank. And in the event, the students in the culinary arts are paired with a chef. And then they work together. And then they compete in several categories. And I actually was one of the judges. So I was the least qualified judge in the community. I had three actual chefs that I was judging with. And it was really fascinating for me to kind of look at what they look at. My opinion was mostly that was good. But it was really fantastic. And the winning dishes, the first place was a $10,000 scholarship to Sullivan Culinary Arts School, and second, I believe, was $8,000, and then 4 or 6. So it was a big money event for those students, and it was just fantastic. And I'll judge every year if I get to eat everything like that. It was outstanding. Carmel High School Student Government is once again hosting gift wrapping for Riley, so you can save some time, let high school students wrap your gifts in exchange for a donation to Riley's Children's Hospital. So the community can visit the high school on Saturday, December the 21st, it's coming up, from 12 noon to 8 p.m., and then Sunday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So take those presents and we'll wrap them up for you for a donation. I started talking about this a little bit before the meeting, but I attended the CHS Winter Orchestra concert. I got there a little bit late, but I caught our Philharmonic Orchestra, and they performed the pieces that they're going to perform at the Midwest Clinic International Band and Orchestra Conference in Chicago. This is one of the national biggies, and they were invited because of their talent. So big congratulations to our conductors, Mrs. Oli Davis, Mr. Chen, and Mrs. Height, and the Carmel High School Symphony Orchestra. It's always good to see hardworking musicians get rewarded for their efforts. To be chosen for this, it's a great thing. I know the audition process was rigorous, and it took a lot of hours to prepare and rehearse, and the teamwork necessary to make that happen. This clinic is well known and revered by musicians all over the country and beyond. Musician educators from all over the world will be there. And they're going to experience Carmel High School's performance. So it's an amazing honor just to be chosen for that. I was also impressed to learn that they're playing a premiere piece by adventure composer Stephen Lias. And I'm a novice hiker. I like to hike. And I was intrigued when I learned that the piece was inspired by his experience in backpacking Indiana's longest hiking trail, which is a 58-mile knobstone trail. And so after hearing them last week in the concert, I'm sure the performance will take the listener on a wonderful through hike and into the music world. So I encourage the team of musicians to just enjoy the journey as they participate in the experience, and we're so proud of them, and just embrace the moment and let their light shine. So bravo to the Carmel High School Symphony Orchestra. And then came the bell ringer. close. It was very close. The orchestra kind of knocked me off my feet. But I attended the Holiday Spectacular, and when they open those curtains and 500 kids start singing, and there's another 100 that are in the orchestra and in the pit, and there's also the lights and the sound. There's kids all over the place. This is a monster event, and the quality is just amazing. You laugh, you cry, you experience full range of emotions, and just what a wonderful thing. And the community that place is full, and the community looks forward to it. And I was able to take my mother-in-law and her friend from the card club, and they were just in awe. And just what a special event. And just kudos to the directors and all involved in the holiday spec. It was amazing. So looking forward to another run next year. So that concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dr. Beresford? No. So next on the agenda, it's hard to believe, but December 23rd through January 6th is winter break. Our teachers will be back on January 6th, and our students on January 7th. January 13th will be the school board reorganizational meeting for 2020. January 20th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, no school. January 27th is the school board regular session meeting. I do want to note that it will be starting at 6 p.m. instead of the normal 7 p.m. time, and we will have some board professional development after that meeting. I also would like to take the opportunity to wish everybody happy holidays and happy new year. We'll see you in 2020. And with that, I will accept the motion to adjourn. A second? All in favor? Thank you. Meeting adjourned.